Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce DeTorres, and with me is Chris Bennett, who's running for the House as a Democrat in California's District 3. Chris is a disabled Army veteran whose top issues are affordable housing, groceries, nutrition and food security, public homeowners insurance, healthcare access and single payer, good jobs, livable wages, labor power, and more. His website is Bennett4FORCA.com. Thank you very much for joining me again. Chris, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Talk about yourself, your background, your skills, your capabilities, why you will make a compelling representative in the House.
Sure. So, my background was first and foremost as an Army officer. I started out field artillery, but then I switched to cyber because I have a computer science degree. When I was at school, my emphasis during my program was really on information and cybersecurity. When the Army created the cyber branch, I was one of the first handful of officers that were accepted into it as a transfer. While I was there, I helped defend our nation's networks and also do a bunch of governance and standing up organizations to really make sure that we had things like, HR and logistics and security and technology. When I got out of the Army in 2018, I worked in healthcare IT for 5 years. I did executive communications. I was a senior manager for IT business operations and also a data analytics manager and an infrastructure and unified telecommunications manager. So all those things gave me a lot of skills to understand some of the problems that we're facing as a society. I think one of the strongest things that we need in Congress is people who understand the technology that we're supposed to be legislating on. We also need people who are able to take these large disparate data sets and distill them down into what's actually important and then simplify it so we can actually communicate that to the general public. There's so much stuff going on right now, and Congress, it feels like they're not really interested in actually solving problems as much as they are in maintaining their seats of power and pleasing their biggest donors. And for me, it's all about if you're not continuously updating your platform because you're checking things off your list, then you're not even doing your job in the first place.
Thank you. And of those major issues, flesh those out for me. Why are those front and center as your top issues?
Yeah, so our campaign is obviously it's different than other campaigns. It's built on hope, it's powered by people, and it's our platform is not only created and developed by us, but also with input from the community. And the things that we're trying to accomplish are things that will not only alleviate people's immediate material concerns, but also try and fix the system that we're living in that has created such horrible outcomes for so many people. So for me, like I personally believe and understand that the majority of people are too busy or too disconnected to even understand what's really going on until it starts to affect their own personal lives. So things like having food in your belly, a roof over your head, feeling safe in your community, knowing that your kids are doing okay, those are the kinds of things that matter to most ordinary people. But because we have such rampant consolidation of wealth and power across nearly every single industry, ever since we stopped doing antitrust enforcement starting in the late 80s, early 90s, people are struggling. And because we have also removed the social safety net in many different cases, people are now finally starting to have to pay attention and say, hey, I'm not doing okay. I can't afford to pay my rent. I can't afford health insurance. I can't afford to put food on the table for me and my kids. Like I've met moms who are choosing not to eat dinner so that their kids can eat dinner. So it's untenable. There's a saying that I think every empire is only three missed meals away from collapse, and we're staring down the barrel of a potential global famine because with the Strait of Hormuz being closed down since Israel and the United States attacked Iran without congressional approval and without any legal justification, more than a fifth of the world's global oil supply is now basically being held hostage. But on top of that, it's like 70 to 80% of the world's fertilizer supply. And we already have a bunch of areas throughout the world that are food insecure. So, in a lot of cases, the United States has been insulated from a lot of these problems when we've done foreign interventions. But now, because the social safety net is gone, because there is a much wider spread access to information that's not being controlled by like brokers like the traditional mainstream media, people are actually able to see like, okay, I can't afford to pay my rent. I'm having to work two or three jobs. I'm worried that my kids aren't going to come home safe from school. And I realized that I'm paying more than $6 a gallon throughout many parts of my district because we started a war with a country who didn't attack us in order to try and steal their oil like we did to Venezuela. So
Mhm.
for me, like I think that we have to focus on people's basic needs. I think we also need to get away from all of these culture war issues. When I say that, what I mean is, the ruling class, the billionaires, the people that own all of these giant corporations, these monopolies, they like things the way that they are. That's why they bought the media companies, so that they could pump out all this propaganda about culture war issues to say, hey, the reason why you can't afford to pay your rent is because trans people exist. Or the reason why you'll never own a home is because immigrants are trying to buy up the homes. Like those are fake problems. They're not real. Like they don't affect the vast majority of people. In fact, trans people have always existed, and immigrants are a net benefit to our economy and our society. They're far less likely to commit crimes. They pay into the system, they get nothing in return, and they're the ones actually building a lot of our housing. So, what the ruling class for a long time has done is they destroy the economy, and then they blame minorities and they scapegoat them. And what we really need to do is focus on the fact that, only the ruling class could have created these conditions in the first place. So what we need
Y-
to do is
Yeah.
break up the monopolies. We need antitrust enforcement, and we need to focus on meeting people's basic needs because that is what a government should be doing in the first place, not just enriching the people that have the most wealth and power.
You alluded at the end there, but enforce the antitrust. Can you talk a little bit more about the proposals and solutions you have in mind?
Absolutely. So I went to business school, even though all of my policies seem very left progressive, they're also based on sound empirical evidence and data and economic theory. So one thing that our country has done is embrace this, mythical fan fiction of trickle-down economic theory. The idea that if you give all the money and wealth to the people that already have all the money and wealth, then somehow that will enrich the people at the bottom. We just know that's not true. And you can disprove all of that with one simple economic theory called average propensity to consume. Specifically, the United
Say that.
States.
Would you say that again,
Yes.
slower?
Yes. So you can disprove the entire fan fiction theory of trickle down economics with one simple economic concept called average propensity to consume. So, what that means, the United States is a consumer economy. So, our economic growth, our value is really based on the ability of Americans to buy things, whether it's services, whether it's goods, whether it's, education. Our ability to consume is what drives our economy. And the reason why we have such high imports relative to exports is because we're a service economy. We don't produce things and send them to other countries. We buy things from other countries and then sell services. So, because of that, we need people to be able to afford things. Now, with average propensity to consume, every single person has a baseline level of needs that they have to have met. Like, I need to have clothes, I need food, I need shelter, I need water, I need healthcare, I need to be able to take care of my kids when I go to work. Now, when you when you have people that, for example, have $1 billion or more, like they have all of their needs met. So if you give them an extra dollar, maybe they'll buy a third yacht. Maybe they'll put it into the stock market or something. But generally speaking, it has very little impact on economic growth because they just don't tend to spend it. On the other hand, when you have people that are at the bottom of the income and wealth distribution, people who are already having to pick and choose which of their basic needs they're going to have met, if you give them an extra dollar, they tend to spend it and they spend it immediately. And when they spend it, they tend to spend it locally and at small businesses, which has a much bigger impact on economic growth. It's also better for our communities because the wealth that's generated and created tends to stay local. And strong
Mhm.
local economies are the backbone of any strong functioning economy as well as democracy.
What can you, as a congressman, propose and push through that could most quickly or effectively reduce the cost of living in your district and elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we could do is just finally, once again, do antitrust enforcement, like breaking up the monopolies. We already have the laws on the books, we just have not been enforcing them or resourcing them effectively. I think one of the best things that President Joe Biden did was, appoint Lena Khan because she actually started going after these monopolies and these people that were engaging in unfair and uncompetitive practices.
In
I
what
think
office was she appointed?
she was FTC, yeah, the Federal Trade Commission. So
Mhm.
her job was basically to make sure that trade was happening fairly, that there was actual competition, that we didn't
Mhm.
have monopolistic practices happening. She was one of the most effective people in any position in the president's administration under Joe Biden. And of course, she was the target of endless harassment and vitriol from the people that are benefiting from the system that we have right now. So for me, I think that what we just really need to do is just do what we're already supposed to be doing in the first place. Like so many of the problems that we're facing could be resolved if people just did their jobs. And the
Yeah.
reason why they're not doing their jobs is because of political interference and the allowance of big money to corrupt our political system.
When you invite people to your website, bennett4ca.com, what do you steer them to and say, hey, listen, if only one reason you vote for me in the primary, it's this, or look at this on my website and get persuaded that I'm the person for this job.
I think the big thing is that the primary is when we get to decide who we're actually going to be voting on in the general. It's the most important component of the election, especially in California, which tends to be more of a single party state. So for us, like our platform is really built on the things that are actually affecting people. It's built on the idea that everyone should have basic human rights and be able to live in dignity and safety, and that we should all have our basic needs being met. So the big thing for me is like I actually care about people because I force myself to be near and around the people. I surround myself with people who hold me accountable and keep me informed. People are constantly bringing us information and helping us be better as a campaign. What I like to tell people is that this campaign is not about me. It's not about me having personal power. It's not about me getting to do something cool. It's about trying to accomplish our platform. The platform is the thing that this campaign is about. So when people come to our website, when they vote for us, when they donate, when they give their time, what they're doing is investing in a better future. And that's what we really need. We need to invest in our future because right now it feels like we're not doing that. Not only that, but I'm also someone who has a good background who actually understands these issues. I understand how foreign policy impacts domestic affairs. I understand the impacts of massive income and wealth consolidation on the destruction of our democracy and the fact that we're struggling because we're prioritizing the desires of people who already have everything they need and more and are not content with having enough. Like there is never going to be enough money for people who are hoarding $1 billion+. So we need to just focus on going back to basics, really just giving every single American another shot at the American dream. Like
Mhm.
I think that that's what we really need to bring back. And for me, I'm rooted in the community. I am focused on always representing people. That's why I give out my cell phone number to just about everyone I meet. I feel like if you can't actually call your representative, then how are they supposed to represent you? The same thing is true when it comes to actually being in DC. Like I'm going to spend as little time in DC as possible because I can't represent people that I'm never around. So if you want to see a change, if you want to actually see a better future, if you want to see a representative who actually cares about humanity and our future and our children, then vote for me in the primary. But I will say that voting is not the end of our civic engagement. In my mind, that's the very bare minimum baseline. It's everything that you do on top of voting that actually makes the biggest difference. So if you want to see that kind of change, if you want a new generation of leaders who actually cares about people, then please give us your time, give us your money, give us your talents. We need all the help that we can get because we're going up against infinite money and people who are trying to keep things the way they are.
Ponder and describe to me your district. Talk to me about your district, please.
Sure. So this district, following the redistricting with Prop 50, is now like as diverse a district as you could possibly have. It has urban areas in Sacramento, it has suburban areas like Rancho Cordova and Folsom, and it has rural areas like Nevada County, El Dorado County. We have people that span the entire spectrum. We have billionaires in the district. We have people that are homeless in the district. We have people who are retirees living on fixed incomes and people who are working in the tech industry. So it's a very diverse district. It's a really good smattering of just like America in general. And the biggest thing that I've been finding is people are just desperate for something to give them hope again. Like I go out, I talk to lots of people. I'm part of these spontaneous movements when people are out protesting wars and protesting genocide and just trying to help their neighbors doing things like mutual aid. And I think that we actually have the best chance we have ever had in our country's history to make things better for everyone. Because I'm seeing people who have never voted before register to vote for the first time just to vote for me. I'm seeing people who have never been to a protest before waking up early on a Sunday morning so that they can go and stand outside and hold a sign and make sure that other people in the community know what they care about. So people are getting activated. And I think that we just need to remember that we have way more in common than sets us apart. We can't keep letting ourselves be divided so that the people who are making money off of all of this conflict can continue to make more money while the rest of us struggle to get by. So I
Hmm.
love the district. We have the entire Lake Tahoe region in it. So I was actually out there yesterday for a candidate forum, and I had a conversation with the Lake Tahoe Community College about the things that they're doing to try and improve access to education and people's basic needs. We also have Nevada County, including Nevada City and Grass Valley. We've gotten a ton of support from those areas because, traditionally they have not had good representation in Congress. And then in Sacramento County, people are really upset with these representatives who take money from foreign country interests and giant corporations and private health insurance companies, and then they just ignore us and refuse to have in-person town halls. Like, I think it's time for us to go back to having real representation in Congress. I love talking to people. Our campaign is interesting because we kind of have like almost an even split between supporters under 45 and supporters over 65. We're still working on that in between range, but we need multi-generational movements if we're actually going to take back power and fight for a better future.
Is the district traditionally Democrat?
So traditionally, before Prop 50,
What year
this
was Prop
district
50? What
it
year
was
did it?
last November, this past November. So before that,
That's when it got redrawn.
yes, sir. So
Okay.
the district I was running in before, District 6, was, pretty blue. It was like +8, +10. And after Prop 50, that district got split in half. And then District 3 was an enormous district that spanned like basically like half of the eastern side of the state. And then they cut it off basically below El Dorado County and above Nevada County, and then added in half of the old District 6. So traditionally, District 3 was extremely conservative. It's still currently represented by Kevin Kiley, but following Prop 50, it's +8, +10 blue. So there's a better chance now to actually flip that seat towards, a Democratic seat than ever before. But I feel like it's not enough to have a Democrat. You need someone who actually cares about human beings and is not part of the establishment and the
Yeah.
corporate control of our commerce.
How long has the incumbent been in?
Kevin Kiley has been in, I think, since 2020. I'm not sure exactly.
What are the primary areas that a congressperson influences and can make the quickest impact on things for a district in general? How would you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing you can do is just not vote wrong, like vote on things that actually help humanity. Like that's the most basic thing that a Congress member does. They vote on legislation. And right now we have Congress members who refuse to vote the right way, like period. Beyond that,
Yeah.
though, you can actually fight to get grants and funding for your district for bills that are already passed. You can do constituent services that actually help people deal with problems with like Social Security and Medicare, for example. But I feel like my role as a future Congress member is to also just do better messaging, like talk to people in a way that they can actually understand so they realize, hey, these things are going to hurt you and they're not going to help you in any meaningful way. Like, and here's how we can actually make things better for your life. Like, that's what our members should be doing. They should be using their national platform to help educate the public on what these policies, what this legislation is actually going to do to materially improve their lives.
As you know, at the ASBL.com, we're about two things: exposing the fact that federal contracts intended and said to go to small businesses. In reality, go to big businesses for decades. It's kind of a con job. The SBA is really the spokesperson and chief distraction that makes us think like, oh, we're meeting the goal of 23% of federal contract dollars going to small businesses. No, not even close.
Like, oh, it's a
And
subsidiary of Amazon, therefore a small business because it only has a certain number of people in it, right?
yeah, and the hugest problem with that is the big businesses that get those contracts don't create new jobs to do the work. They're already big. Whereas if legitimate small businesses got the contract dollars that the law intends for them, they would create an extra 2 million jobs, more or less, every year on top of the jobs that small businesses create. Anyway, small businesses create the vast majority of jobs in America. Why? Because we are nothing but a small business nation. I'm going to ask you, Chris, not right now, but later, are you preaching and teaching the fact that 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses? So most of those contracts are going to the 1/10 of 1% of businesses that are big businesses. And we accuse the federal government of really doing next to nothing for small businesses. What talk back into all that, all about that. Talk to me about all I just shared, please.
Yeah, I think that the economy in a lot of cases has been reinterpreted or redefined to just mean the stock market. But we know that the stock
Bingo.
market
I
is
agree.
almost completely divorced from the economic reality of everyday Americans. Like you said, the vast majority of people work for small businesses. Small businesses drive local economies. In fact, large businesses or giant corporations, giant monopolies, they tend to extract money and wealth out of small local economies, which makes it much harder for people to actually compete and also basically takes that wealth away from the people that would actually benefit from it most. So I support small businesses. And when I say that, I mean like we need to actually make it easier for small businesses to exist. That's one of the reasons why I support single payer universal health care with Medicare for all, because we know that if it's a small business that has to compete with a giant business by providing health insurance to people, a giant business is going to be able to afford health insurance for their employees, but a small business is not going to be able to because there's just so much cost associated, and small businesses just don't have the economies of scale to actually provide health insurance to their staff. So we pass single payer universal health insurance, meaning the government provides health insurance for everyone. Then small businesses are able to compete. Like people who are stuck in jobs they would rather not be in because they want to make sure their family has access to healthcare can go and get an education or they can start a business. We are able to actually stop having to have our students go and work for a giant evil corporation to pay off student loan debt because really there shouldn't even be student loan debt in the first place. So, small businesses, in my mind, is the way that we actually strengthen our local economies, build our communities once again, so that people are actually able to survive and thrive together. And for me, I feel like the fact that the Small Business Administration is doing anything but supporting small businesses is part of the rot and corruption throughout all of Washington, D.C. And we need
Right.
to get the corruption out.
You're spot on. If folks go to SBA.gov to see what the Small Business Administration is up to, it looks and sounds good on the surface. It sounds like they're doing things for small businesses. You have to go to our site, ASBL.com, to see our accusations and the reasons why we hurl them in our decades of experience. In our remaining time, allow me to ask you about our Don't Cheat Women project, don'tcheatwomen.com, which is simply this. We want Congress to raise from 5% to 15% the federal contract dollars that should go to women owned small businesses because women own 40% of all businesses in America and they sell what the government buys. And yet, companies owned by men get more than 95% of all federal contract dollars. We think that's discrimination or against civil rights legislation right there. But the problem is because men earn and save more than women, they dominate in politics. So increasing the contract dollars to women-owned small businesses would allow women to compete politically, and here's why. 75% of all seats in the House, the Senate, all state legislatures, every president's cabinet are held by men. Almost that many governor chairs, 90% of committee chair and party leadership positions held by men. Here's my favorite phrase: we need the wisdom of the whole human race in the councils of government. So anything that helps women become more economically equal will allow them to finally pursue political equality. What do you make of all that, Chris?
I mean, I agree, but I honestly think that the SBA should be providing grants and loans to people in line with their proportion to the population. Like, I mean, I think 15% would be way better than 5%, but 40% should be the goal if 40% of businesses are owned by women. I mean, like, we should be focusing on equity. We should be focusing on improving outcomes so that people are able to live good lives. And we know that when you allow one minority or one small subset of society to determine how everyone else lives, that leads to horrible outcomes for everyone involved. So I support making sure that small owned businesses are actually getting money from the SBA. I support making sure that women owned businesses are getting more because generally speaking, like women are more focused on trying to help other people. Like, it's an uncomfortable truth, but many of the people who are on the front lines of civil rights movements, of economic justice movements, of movements to actually help children and minorities and people who have been disenfranchised, it's almost always being led by women. So we need to empower and raise up the voices of women so that they can actually help us make our society better. And we need to stop trying to arbitrarily maintain these positions of hierarchy for men who, traditionally speaking, are the cause of all of our wars. And I say that as someone who was an army officer, like we have not started very many wars because a woman decided that we need to go and fight people. So I fully support making sure that women have real representation, and we need more women in positions of power. But obviously, it's not enough to just be a woman in a position of power. We also need people with moral clarity on the issues. So it doesn't do us any good if we have someone who's a warmonger who happens to be a woman. We need to actually have the types of women who don't get these positions of power in power, because
Right.
that's
And
how we can fight for real change.
that's how we can fight for real change. What are your thoughts? And this will be my last question. So, enjoy, telling me whatever you want. It's mid-April right now. Okay. I'm going to get this on the internet as fast as I can in the next couple of days so that you can so it's useful to you, Chris. What do you say to your district from mid-April to June? When's the primary? June what?
June 2nd is the primary.
Talk to your district right now, about what you want for them and why they should go check out your site, Bennett4ca.com.
Yeah, I fundamentally want every single person to live in dignity and safety and have their basic needs. And if you feel like the neighbors that you have, the people that are struggling to afford rent, the people who've already lost their homes deserve to have good lives too, then support our campaign. If you believe that we should have the federal government providing funding for our fire departments, especially in the areas most likely to be impacted by wildfires caused by climate change, support our campaign. If you want someone who actually has moral clarity, who understands international and humanitarian law, and knows that starting unjust forever wars in foreign countries or supporting foreign genocides is bad, then check out our campaign. Most importantly, though, we can't do this alone. And if you want to actually see a better future, then we need you to invest in our campaign, and whatever that may look like. We can't do this alone. We need people like you to make it happen. So please help us get into Congress and take back the power from these giant corporations, these billionaires, these members of the Epstein class, and help us actually fight for everyday people and our kids so that we all can have a better future. One thing I love to say is this campaign, it's about making sure that young people feel hope again and making sure that our elders can actually rest instead of having to wake up early on a Sunday morning to go and protest fascism. So if you want to see more peace in our world, if you want to see more justice, then please help us get into Congress because we're going to bring you with us.
Bennett4ca.com. That was really nice. Stick around after I kill this recording, Chris, but I want to thank you for a very most enjoyable conversation.
Agreed.
And I want to thank everybody for watching and listening today.